Hey guys, welcome back, it's Ripe again. In today's video, an unhinged customer Karen slaps the owner of a business claiming that she deserves free food because she knows the owner. Here is what happened, let's dive right into the video. The first one starts like this. I'm the boss of a restaurant in a little city or a large town depending on how you're looking at it. People here like my restaurant chain, which I started when I came here 20 years ago after I got my bachelor's in culinary art. It's been doing pretty good, all thanks to my wife. She got her business degree and helps things running smoothly. We are sweethearts from college and been together for a long while, 2 decades to be exact. Even though we got a bunch of restaurants now, we still have time to drop by each one every month. We do that to make sure the food is still up to standards and to hear from our staff. We want to know what is what and if anything is important. Since it is a small city, connections are important and one must be updated with what is happening around them. About 3 months ago, we opened up a new branch. This one was in a part of the city where fancy restaurants were not many and maybe 2 in total. People said our business might not do so great there, but we had a different plan. Making lots of money was not the main goal for this branch. We wanted more folks to know about us, even though these folks might not live in the busy center of the city. I aimed to turn our restaurant chain into a well-known name and a family favorite in the city, so we couldn't cut corners literally. So when we showed up on the very first day of opening, things were going pretty smooth. The place was not completely full, but it was close and everyone seemed to like the fancy setup. But well, on the 3rd day, we ran into a problem. A Karen. Yeah, one of those folks who always wants to talk to the boss because her breadsticks were not oily enough and her salad was too oily. We actually found out about the whole thing after it was done, but I will tell it in order so it makes sense. This Karen showed up a few hours before we closed and the only thing she wanted and asked for was a bottle of wine. But even after her drink was given to her, this Karen kept bothering our male waiters. She would call them over every 10 or so minutes, ask them about the menu and what they like to eat, but never actually order anything. Then things took a disgusting turn when she put her hand on one of our waiter's thighs. Luckily, our waitress stepped in quickly. She pulled the waiter away and told the Karen that she had to order some food because her wine was all gone and she couldn't just hang out here any longer. The Karen let out a huff and started talking in a rude way. After about 5 minutes of complaining about jealous singles and desperate women, she asked for free appetizers. Our waitress told her that free starters were only for the opening day and now she would need to pay. But the Karen was not having it. She started going on about how she is a pal of the owner and he promised her free food at his new place. Our waitress wasn't buying it though and politely said that she could not give out freebies like that. Karen, you're kidding me, right? I know the owner. He said I could have anything I want. He literally invited me here, you moron. Waitress, I'm really sorry, but I cannot give you free food. You will have to order and pay. Karen, this is ridiculous. Get your manager here now. Waitress, I'm here to help, but I cannot give you free food, and I assure you, the owner does not promise free meals like that. Unless and until the owner comes to sit here with you, we cannot take your word for it. Karen, how dare you? I will have you fired for this. The waitress kept her cool, trying her best to be calm and polite while Karen got more and more aggressive. It was like Karen was on a mission to get her way, no matter what. At that very moment, my wife and I walked into the restaurant and were confronted with this whole messy situation. The waitress and Karen were so into their argument that they had not even noticed us entering. Our waitress was trying hard to reason with Karen, but Karen was just not having any of it. My wife and I started heading towards their table, trying to figure out what was happening, but then out of the blue, Karen stood up so suddenly that her chair toppled back. And then she had the audacity to slap our waitress. It all happened so fast, without thinking, I dashed forward and pulled the waitress away from the escalating chaos. But this time, Karen's swing hit me instead of the waitress. Karen was still shouting, going on about how our staff was rude and aggressive, and how they would not serve her, and how they were calling her a liar without any reason. As I was trying to calm things down, Karen pointed her finger at me and kept yelling. She threatened that she would talk to the owner, not realizing it was actually me, and get everyone fired for ruining her supposed great night. At this point, I'd had enough of Karen's nonsense. I cut her off before she could spew more of her ridiculous claims. I looked at her straight in her eyes and said, I am the owner of this restaurant. Yes, the same one you claim to be buddies with, and I can assure you that I don't keep friendship with people like you who behave so poorly towards my staff or any staff in general. Karen just scoffed and rolled her eyes. She was not buying it, not even a bit. "Oh please, like I'm supposed to believe that," she retorted with a snarky tone. I stayed calm and replied, "Believe what you want, but your actions are causing a disturbance. I've asked my manager to call the police and they will be here soon." This seemed to set Karen off even more. She started shouting at me, claiming that I was trying to frame her and ruin her night. She got right up in my face, fake tears streaming down her cheeks, and started accusing the male staff of harassing her and trying to take advantage of her innocence. I knew I had to maintain my distance, but Karen's actions were becoming more aggressive. She actually started touching me again, trying to force me to touch her as well. That was the last straw. I suddenly signaled to my wife, who was watching the situation unfold, to step in. The police were not gonna arrive in time, so it was up to us to de-escalate the situation. It was becoming clearer that Karen was out of control and we needed to handle this before things got even more out of hand. Little did Karen know, my wife was actually a kickboxing expert. As Karen once again tried to touch me inappropriately, she did not have time to even blink before my wife's swift and skilled move knocked her out. Don't worry, my wife was extremely talented and Karen was not gonna have more brain damage than she already had. She was only going to be out for a few minutes, which was just enough time for the police to arrive. As if on cue, the police showed up just as Karen was beginning to regain consciousness. My waitress and manager quickly briefed the officers on all the events that had unfolded. I encouraged my waitress to press charges and she agreed. I shared my side of the story to the police officers as well. Karen, in her dazed state, started to understand the situation, but she was not about to go down without a fight. She began to paint me and my staff as the villains, claiming that she was being assaulted by us. She tried to play the victim card, but luckily we had CCTV footage that captured the whole scene. After about 30 minutes of back and forth with the police, they made their decision and they basically shoved Karen in their car. I pressed charges against her as well, along with a waiter who was harassed by the Karen. After a brief investigation, Karen ended up behind bars for a good few months, facing the consequences of her own actions. And here, Ripe Stars, I'm so glad that Karen got exactly what she deserved, and I hope she won't terrorize any restaurants in the near future again. If you enjoyed the story so far, please don't forget to like the video and maybe even leave a comment, because that would help me tremendously. Either way, the next one is titled "Mistaken for Someone Else." Background: I am the second manager of a deli department in a large grocery store. The layout of my department is thus. From the entrance you have about 20 feet of sandwich bar, then there's a little counter for a check stand, ends up being important, and then you have our sushi station. Also our Chinese hot case, the fried food hot case, entrance to the department, and then about 40 feet of fresh-made salads and sliced meat counters. Whole department runs an easy 300 feet along the west wall. The important thing to know is, the Chinese food and sushi are not our department, they don't even work for the same company as I do. We work in the same space, but they are a franchisee. Thus at no time we do serve their food or do they serve ours. And as it is unfortunately pertinent to my story, the franchisees are a Burmese immigrant family. Finally, there is a lot of paraphrasing, but this accurately represents the testimony I gave in court. Part number 1 of the story, the lady. So this all happens during the great toilet paper shortage of 2020. Mostly our customers were great, but everyone was running high stress back then. After the head boss leaves, I'm in charge, so I try to hide and in the back and do the cooking, only coming up when the front area needs extra hands. Anyways, this day I'm cooking or frying something or other and I hear commotion in the front. I hate customer service, but I'm really good at it, so I head over to see what is going on. There's an angry old lady just absolutely losing her mind at the Chinese hot case. I go over to figure out what the problem is. Me: "Hello ma'am, how can I help you?" AOL: "I want a 2-item combo. Half rice, half chow mein, peppered beef and orange chicken." Yes, I remember her exact order. OP: I gestured to Steve, the Chinese department chef. "Alright then. My partner in crime will be able to help you with that." AOL: "Not him, you. Get me my food." Me: "I'm sorry ma'am, we are 2 different departments, but Steve will be more than happy to..." I'm cut off. AOL: "I want you to serve me, not him. Get me my food." OP: "I'm not allowed to cross departments, but Steve will be able to..." I'm cut off again. AOL: "I don't want that." Insert Asian slur: "To touch my food. Get it for me now." This goes on for a couple more exchanges. The gist is I try and bring her down and she keeps demanding I help her, so I go to my default and call a manager over the intercom. She keeps screaming, the manager gets there and I try and explain the situation to him while she is still squawking. More racial slurs the entire time. He tries 3 or 4 times to talk her down. Angry old lady just keeps screaming for a white person to get her food instead of this Asian slur. You all should probably know that my manager at this time was a big old Samoan dude. To his credit, he tried to talk her down 2 or 3 times and she kept crowing, and then he shut her down. "Ma'am, you're not allowed to shop here right now. Please leave the premises." Guess what? She kept screaming slurs and making demands. At this point, the other customers are talking crap to her. I'm currently trying to get them to shut up politely while my store manager is just insisting that AOL don't get to shop here anymore today. And well, AOL, aka Angry Old Lady, eventually gives up and storms out, never shutting up. She's gonna sue us all, we are all gonna be fired, all the cuss words, the works. She is also very insistent that her son is gonna make us pay and kill us all. Also important for later. And she is leaving. I am struck by inspiration. You see, I do customer service based on a strict script. Part of that script is the parting sentiment. You always let the customer know how much you appreciate them shopping with us. So, as my very large Samoan boss is using his mask to gently herd the angry old lady out of the store, I shout out at the top of my lungs, "Thank you for shopping at company, please come again." I'm not gonna lie to you and say everyone clapped, but I got some very good laughs from the customers watching this whole ordeal. As a failed stand-up comedian, I enjoyed it, and after she finally let my boss came up to me, "Damn it, OP, when you said that, it was all I could do to not laugh. Back to work and clear this line." So we did. I had some customers compliment me on how I handled the situation, which is nice. More importantly, my coworkers, who I deeply care about, also showed me their appreciation. That means a lot to me, so that was very nice. All in all, if that had been the end of the story, I would have posted this in March 2020. However, part 2 of the story, The Sun. Same day, about 6 to 7 hours later, 9 PM-ish. The store is still open, but the department is long since closed. Part of my duties is finishing up the cleanup at the end of the night. At this particular moment, I was scrubbing the floors down by the sandwich area, mop water all over the floor, hitting it with a deck brush so I can squeeze it into the floor sink. I even had one earbud in. I was listening to the Time Suck episode about Genghis Khan. I know that because it is in the court record. Angry voice, "You!" I look up, I see a very angry young man. You all should know I'm 6'3" but skinny as hell, and I've never fought a day in my life. This gentleman easily had 2 inches on me, looked like he lived at the gym, and had several what I can only describe as very prominent intimidating tattoos showing on both his face and arms. Angry voice, "Are you the guy that's disrespecting my mom?" OP, what? I hadn't figured out what was going on at this point. Son, you're the one that disrespected my mom. There's really no way to accurately express our conversation at this point. He is leaning up against us 5 feet sandwich bar counter, looking like death incarnate going to break through the plexiglass. I'm confused at first and then terrified that this monster is angry at me. Once I realize what's happening, I do remember the last thing he said. "Angry son, you're getting beat." Then he goes over to the sandwich bar check stand and vaults over it into the back counter area. You remember how I said I was cleaning the floor? Fast fact about the tile that's used in deli type areas, it gets very slick. We wear special shoes and still have problems if the floor is covered with water. I had not squeezed any of the water from the area he landed in, so while I'm still thinking about using my deck brush as a hammer to defend myself, he lands and does a comical slide fall. He hits hard, feet slide out immediately upon contact and ends up landing on his head. Like Looney Tunes level of impact. The other employees up at the front check stands have noticed the commotion and come over by then. What am I doing at this point? Well, I've seen the video. There's a good 30 seconds of me standing with a stiff bristle brush over my shoulder, like I'm going to blacksmith this guy who's lying on the floor in front of me, motionless, and there's blood. Blood in a pool of soapy water on an already red tile floor is kind of weird looking. I don't even like thinking about it now. One of my coworkers is already on the phone with the police and informs them that they are going to need an ambulance as well. 911 tells us not to touch him and they are there within 3 minutes. The professionals deal with everything then, paramedics deal with angry boy, and I end up talking to the police for the rest of my shift. I did not even have to finish the floors and still got an hour's overtime. Part number 3, the lawyers. This bit of the story is the longest period of time with the shortest amount of interesting stuff. As for myself personally, well, I am union, this all happened at work and I needed to testify for it. I ended up getting 3 days off and fully paid for maybe 6 hours of deposition and maybe 15 minutes in a courtroom. My favorite points of this part of the whole ordeal: number 1, I ended up going downtown and talking to an assistant district attorney, I guess, who stressed how to just say, I don't know, if I was asked about the specifics of the conversations I had, and then they would legally lead me into expressing the conversation. Then her boss comes in and gets really pissy because I keep telling him that I don't know, he and I did not get along, it might have been my fault, but we shouted at each other a lot. His office sent me a Christmas card though, so yeah. Number 2, turns out the son not only had multiple warrants in California, but he had several warrants in other states. The boss district attorney constantly complained about how this made his job harder. Number 3, when the angry old lady was on the stand, she was exactly how I remembered her standing in line. She cussed every 5th word, every other time she cussed it was racial, and she had nothing but disdain for the entire process of law. She is a damn dirty Karen, but I can respect that, other than the racism that is. And yeah, Ripe stars, that woman was certainly a piece of work. Oh my god, I'm so happy that I don't have to deal with people like this. Either way, the next one is an Am I the A-hole story. So I, 47 female, have always had a very strained relationship with my brother, 51 male. He has had a very bad accident when he was 17 and spent 3 months in a coma. Ever since he has been the child, my parents swooned over and they make excuses for everything he does. I've been to therapy because of this for over a decade, as I resented him for my parents forgetting about me when I was younger, even though I love my parents to death. My nephew, 31 male, has basically been raised by my parents as well. His mom passed away during childbirth and my brother lived with our parents till about 4 years ago when he moved in with his girlfriend. Because my brother is handicapped and doesn't have big motor skills, a lot of the childcare was taken care of by my parents over the years. Until my nephew moved out of state 5 years ago for his job. A couple of weeks ago, my parents were meeting with their lawyer to set up their will, as they are both no longer in the best of health and want to make sure that we are taken care of. The only big thing they have is their house and car. They were talking about that they want to split the inheritance 3 ways, and I got confused and asked them why 3 ways considering it's only me and my brother. They said they wanted my nephew in there as well, as they basically raised him since childbirth and consider him largely as their kid too. I told them that's not fair, as I have 2 kids as well, and if my nephew is in the will, they should as well. My brother said that what they were doing with their money is their business and I should stay out of it, but I disagreed. Eventually, my parents agreed and did not give my nephew his share. My brother called it a giant dick move and called me petty to punish my nephew for the resentment I have towards him. We broke out into a fight that my parents had to unfortunately break up. My nephew called me a couple of days ago to check in on my youngest, as he is her godfather. He had already heard what happened and just said that it was a bit of a Karen move to do, but he's unbothered by it as it is none of his business, but my brother is still very upset with me and my parents are rather cold to me as well. Am I the a-hole here? And yeah, Ripe stars, let me know what you think about this. OP is the a-hole here or not? Let me know in the comments. Comment number 1 from Reddit, not the a-hole. OP's parents brought OP into the conversation about distribution, and OP gave the opinion that a will that included the nephew should also include OP's children. Comment number 2, your parents are cold to you for being factual. They have 3 grandkids, so if they want to give to their grandkid, they should also give it to the other 2. Fair is fair. Do they even know or address the fact that they caused you being in therapy because of them? Like, sure, your brother needed more support, but they ignored you. In the end, it's their money, but they should be fair. In my country, it doesn't even matter what is written in the will, you get a percentage of the inheritance. Update number 2, I just want to clarify some things. My nephew is godfather of my youngest, she is 7, my eldest is 10. He is also the only one in the family around his age. All my cousins are around my age, and then there are the small kids. He and I have a good relationship, he has always been a very hard worker and studied hard to be where he is now. And I cannot be more proud of him for what he's been able to accomplish with the limited resources that he has. My parents absolutely adore my kids as well and babysit often when me and my husband need help or are busy with work. My parents are in a care home and want none of us to take care of them. They made sure that no one had to, and even when my nephew was living with them, he did errands for them like running to shops, groceries, making appointments for them when need be. Just because he moved out of state, he cannot do that anymore. We also did it together, as many mentioned that my brother wasn't able to do this. It's true that they see my nephew more as a son than a grandson. Edit number 2, to answer a few more questions I've received. Me and my husband have been together for nearly 20 years. He has his own construction business and I am a head teacher. I also think the reason why my parents want to take him in the will is because of all the medical expenses my brother had with the accident and the continuous aftercare. He's had virtually nothing left of his share of the inheritance. I think that's what my parents tried to avoid by putting my nephew in the will, though I'm not fully sure. Edit number 3, people ask me about my nephew's mother's side of the family, but she came out of foster care. My parents looked into getting into contact with anyone, but it appeared she was on her own too before meeting my brother. So there's nothing there either. My nephew has worked every weekend and holiday ever since he was 14 to pay for his tuition and largely his expenses like clothes and the like, and my parents didn't support him financially as much as they would have liked. My nephew and his soon-to-be husband have good paying jobs like me and my husband too, so it's not like he needs the assets either. I talked to him about this after the post blew up the way it did, and he said that if it bothers me this much, he would rather have his share put in a college fund for my daughter, his godchild. I told him that this is not what this is about, and he just said he cannot win on this and won't discuss this any further and just not inform him of anything anymore, and he's going for the come what may mindset. He also said the same thing to my parents. And with this, we have reached the end of the video. However, if you cannot get enough of my content, please check out my endless playlist, where you can find thousands of hours of content. In addition, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel to not miss any of my daily uploads. Thank you so much in advance, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.